Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's event. And today we are going to listen to a very famous economist from India on the conditions of Muslims' marginalizations. So the poster will tell you all the details, but marginalization of Indian Muslims during early 21st century and community's response. And the speaker is a very well-known economist from India, much known for his role in famous Sachar Committee report as a former secretary. I'm not going to say much beyond that because we have invited another very established economist for the opening remarks, Dr. Ishrat Hussain, our very dear own Ishrat Appa, who was a senior economist at World Bank, and now presently she is a senior health advisor at US Aid International. And Dr. Ishrat Hussain will be giving the opening remarks as well as introducing the speaker of today. So Ishrat Appa, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Razi, for that introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I really am delighted at the privilege of introducing Dr. Abu Saleh Sharif. He has been really well known, as Razi pointed out, and he has really made a tremendous difference in the lives of Muslims who has really been low in educational and social status, as we all know. And as Verzi mentioned, he was a member secretary of the Prime Minister's high-level committee called Sachar Committee. It was headed by the former Chief Justice, Rajan Sachar, and the purpose of the committee was to study social, economic, and educational status of Muslims in India. You must have read about the committee report that it was tabled, I think, in the parliament in 2006. And it was also made public. It made an impact, like many other reports that are just shelved, and I would like to mention a couple of them. The national and many state governments, as a result of the committee report, restructured respective budgetary allocations favoring the deprived Muslims, which is really a great achievement. Also, the new Ministry of Minority Affairs and other institutions were established both at the national and at the state levels. Two major recommendations are not yet implemented, and these include the establishment of Equal Opportunities Commission offices at national and state level, and also ensuring diversity in employment and education through computation of diversity index, which I think is a novel idea. And this was recommended both at the national and state level. So the community must continue to build pressure with the Indian government. And probably we need a meeting like this to discuss also what the diaspora can do in that respect. Because I think that the committee report is very sound, well accepted, and it will be a pity if we do not take opportunity of the committee, which is still fresh in the report is still fresh in the memory of many of us, those who have been involved in this effort. But this was not the only prestigious position he held. He was nominated to the 13th Indian Finance Commission by the Ministry of Finance, Government of India. The membership of the Finance Commissions is highly committed among the economists. To top it all, he was selected as the Economist of the Millennium by India Today magazine in 2000. Prior to coming to Washington, he was the chief economist at the National Council of Applied Economic Research in New Delhi. He has been in and out of Washington, no stranger to Washington. He worked as senior research fellow at the Food Policy and Research Institute in Washington. That was, I think, from 2008 to 2010. He is currently working on a critical topic in the Indian context, 21st century citizenship, making sense of national identity, control over resources, and inclusivity in the globalized world. Dr. Sharif's studies are also very diversified. He studied economics and demography from Bangalore University, then Australian National University, and then Yale, all the prestigious institutions. As he mentioned, the topic of his talk today is marginalization of Indian Muslims during early 21st century and community responses. I look forward to hearing his thoughtful perspective and also discussing later on what can the diaspora do to carry on his legacy.
Yeah, so now Dr. Abu Saleh Sharif, sir. Yeah, it's your turn, please.
Thank you, Razi Bhai and Isha Tapa. I'm so happy and delighted to be talking with you. And I have a request. I want somebody to alert me 10 minutes before the so-called my time gets over so that I can conclude it properly. The topic is very vast. So it is highly multidimensional. It touches on economic issues, it touches on social issues, it touches on politics. It is really complex. So that is the reason why I have a PowerPoint presentation here. After the presentation, if somebody is interested, there is a copy available with Razi Bhai. You can share that with others. And I would welcome the comments. I will also welcome the comments on my presentation after I finish my presentation. If somebody gets bored in between, you can frustrating questions, one or two, you can definitely ask me as I go. But it is better you write down and send the questions to Razi Bhai so that he can moderate it. I know the topic announced is marginalization and community response. But I have put a slightly modified topic on my PowerPoint. It's called augmenting or increasing the trust gap. That is the issue. The issue is economic, the issue is political, the issue is social, they are multidimensional issues. But ultimately, what is being achieved through this whole process of marginalization is to augment the trust gap between the Muslims and the larger communities in India. This is a slightly different twist in understanding what it means, and I'm sure as I complete my presentation, this issue will get highlighted in the minds of the listeners.
So, do you need a how you are going to share the power presentation?
You have a copy. You can share it later. At the moment, I'm going to run down myself.
But for that, I have to make you.
No. You don't have to. You don't have to show that over there. Let the people listen now, and you can share it later.
Okay.
Okay. All right?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. It will be easy.
Yeah.
It will be easy to do that.
That's fine. That's fine.
There is no need for others to refer to PowerPoint as I speak. First, let them listen, and then people get interested to know more. You can share it. All right. So first thing, I have to lay down the context of this talk. The context is obvious. Muslims are facing marginalization process in India. Title says it. But now a very quick answer for that is, what do we do? How do we do? What happens to the Muslims long term? Now the basic frame is, Muslims are affected in the same manner like other communities through the given conditions. What are the given conditions? Economic, political, social. So within that, there are constraints and there are opportunities. The given conditions are there. There are many constraints which are maneuverable, but there are also opportunities. So let us see those opportunities as we as we analyze our constraints, and then we will see what opportunities we have to overcome this very serious threat which the Muslim community is facing. Now, the given conditions are the economic dimensions or the economic maneuverability, the utilization of the economic system in India is linked with the current economic structure of India. So if you want to understand the economic maneuverability, how much Muslims can use the economic system, you have to understand its structure. So the Muslim community has not understood the changing structure of the Indian economy. That's a kind of generalized comment, but we can go to specifics as we go on. The present and future living conditions of Indian Muslims will be aligned closely with the growth trajectory of Indian economy. What this means is simple. Generally, we say, "Arey, Muslims ka kuch nahi ho raha hai, Muslims are discriminated." All that I agree. Muslims lynching ho raha hai, all that I know. I know what is happening. But something has happened to Muslims in India, which has happened to everybody else in India. For example, the secular improvement in economic system, reduction of poverty, incomes has happened to everybody in India, including the Muslims. Now, if you see, all of you who are listening to me, you think of 10 different families around you. You used to know them 20 years ago, and you analyze them. What are they today? Are they better off? Or are they worse off? And my gut feeling will be 20 to 20 of those families will be better off today. Not even one family will be worse off unless there is something disastrous has happened to that family. बहुत कम उम्र में अर्निंग मेंबर्स मर गए. There was a very strong court case. उनका पूरा जायदाद वगैरह हड़प हो गया. ऐसा सिचुएशन बहुत कम होता है. But the Muslims have also benefited. So this is very important. We have to keep in mind. India is experiencing unprecedented multi-dimensional development. Multi-dimensional everywhere. मैं यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में भी रहता हूं. मैं यहाँ की इकोनॉमी में क्या हो रहा है, what is happening in US economy, I observe, and then I go back to India and suddenly I cannot understand what's happening in India in spite of COVID. Now reconstruction activities, we can talk about that later, but think of just before COVID situation. Although Indian economy was declining a bit since late 17, 2018 and 19 May, and then COVID came and there is a disaster. I'm aware of it, but still the vibrancy of the economic system in India is very, very large, very diverse, very large, very vibrant. So that means the more vibrant the economy is, the more opportunities it creates. So now the point that we will analyze is, can Muslims use those opportunities? Are they using opportunities? Do they understand the structure of the economy? These are the issues that people like us have to think about. However, there are problems in India, major problems. The development is uneven, huge regional disparities, huge social disparities. Not all people have benefit. I told Muslims also got benefit out of India's development. But the issue is not all people got the benefit approximately equally. There is huge disparity. Now the issue is, in a large society like India, disparities will always be there. But the issue is whether the disparity before, is it declining and bridging it, or the disparities are increasing. So that is the issue. The issue is, in case of Muslims, Muslim growth is also taking place, but the disparity, the other communities are running faster, and the Muslims they used to run, but now they are walking. So that means the disparity is increasing. Why the Muslims who are also running along with other communities are walking today could be the issue of today's discussion. That means there are constraints, there are limitations. Some limitations are evolved within the community, some may be imposed by the system, some may be clearly thought about government policy. We will today talk about it, and please bear in mind, this issue I am talking in an open forum for the first time in my life, and the government itself is responsible to increase this disparity. So that is what we have to talk about today. Now, there are two types of analysis we do to see whether things are improving. One is then and now. The other is they and us. Now, it's a combination of then and now and they and us, which is what will provide us the structure to understand disparities. Relative comparison is an essential extension of assessing absolute level of development. It is not enough to say India is growing. It is important to say who within India the relative development is taking place is the challenge, and which has been there in the economic literature, political economy literature, but now it has become very relevant to do that. Now I have some important slides here which you cannot see. So where I have shown that the projections, China, India, Japan, United States, these large economies. If you see, India is the only country that in next 30 to 40 years has the opportunities to increase their middle class. At the moment, middle class is still low. But in next 30 to 40 years, India will have the largest middle class in the whole world. How do you define middle class is an issue. We can talk about that later. But the fact is, the middle class is the class which will have the ability to spend. It will have the ability to perform. It is the middle class which has the ability to kick off the economic production and distribution systems. So there is no escape that India is going to have the largest middle class. Right now it is the largest, but it has a smaller amount of disposable income, but the disposable income is also going to increase as we go on for next 20, 30 years. So from that perspective alone, keep dynamism of the Indian economy in mind. From that perspective alone, in spite of the problems which Muslims are facing, Muslims are going to benefit and reap the benefit of India's development in next 20, 30 years. Let's go on that one. More recently, I have brought here projections and data for quarterly data for last 3 years of Indian economy. India has suffered very badly. United States has suffered very, very badly. So the issue is India is going to rebound 10%, 12% growth rate next year. It can possibly do 10, 12, it can do even 20. But the issue is it has fallen so deep, even at 15% growth next year will reach only to the surface. It will not reach to the 15% growth of the previous year. So that means India may rebound, but still it will be at the zero level. So the growth during 16, 17, 14 period, that is 10%, 8%, 9% growth rate, to achieve positive 9% growth rate, we are still, I see 4 to 5 years in the horizon. So we will have economic difficulties in India for next 3 to 5 years. Don't expect there is a magic wand. Government says something, budget, they say V-shaped growth. All that is people like us who think a little bit more deeply with respect to both relative and absolute level of development. I'm not convinced that V-shaped growth will help communities yet. And whether the V-shaped growth happens, that itself is disputed. The government babus and Johnnies there, they talk so much in the media. please ignore all those talk. Economic forecasting is a serious business and it has to be done by the professionals. In spite of all this, just a comparative picture, India is still having a large economy. It is supposed to be very close. It is in the league of the top 5. Top 5 in terms of some accounting, which says India has so much of GDP, 4 trillion or something like that. But if you take the per capita income, you just see the nominal per capita income of United States, it's $65,500 per year. On an average, every human being in United States adds $65,000 to the national economy. China adds about $11,000 to the national economy of the Chinese. Indians add only 2,100. So people say every day headlines, India, China, big democracies too. Oh, these two people, India now competing with China. No, India is not competing with US. India's per capita income is only $2,000 and United States is $66,000 per year. We have a very long way to go. Now, it is useful to feel good about the competitive spirit, but sometimes this unnecessary, irrelevant competitions will destroy economies. So that is what we need to be careful about. Now, this is data, and now I'm going away from data and getting into the real political economy issues. Constraints and opportunities. Pre-independent confrontational politics led to a strategy which led to partition. Partition, planned exclusion, and lot of misery. That is what happened around 1947. The politics and process of marginalization of Muslims did not begin after independent India. It began during the British. Why? British had to fight the rulers of those period, and those were Muslims. Hindus were not ruling India at that time when the British came in. It was the Muslim rule. So the British fought the Muslims, not the Hindus. Actually, the Hindus counterbalance to fight with the Muslims. So essentially, British fought and liquidated Muslim rule in India. Remember the terminology, divide and rule. That's what they did. They divided Hindus to liquidate the Muslim rule. Now, isolation and marginalization of Muslims is continuing even after independence. And it has reached its peak since 2014. Now, why 2014? I don't have to say. There is the second continuous run of BJP, Modi's ascent to power. However, the solutions of the current Muslim crisis must be found within the confines of the Indian Constitution. This is a statement which I personally feel we can argue about it later. Why? Now, 2014, why 2014 is a kind of watershed for Indian Muslims? It is because of the radical Hindutva onslaught. India is dominated by majoritarianism since 2014. Unfortunately, this is a gift of Indian independence and democracy. It took us 70 years to reach to that majoritarian. So, the majoritarian government is built upon shoulders and the lives of Indian Muslims. India predominantly Hindu, 80%. The anti-Muslim overtures enhance popularity of the radical Hindutva politics and allows them and enables them with electoral success. It is as simple as that. So they want to be in power. They use the Muslims as the devil. The Hindu mythology allows, devil, unkumaro. So you feel happy. So now Muslim is the devil, and then new one votes. Government formalized and facilitated caste-based subjective manipulations, mechanisms to promote radical politics and social marginalization of Muslims. Very loaded statements there. And now today I fully believe these statements I never made earlier. And now I'm formulating this thought because this is what the truth and reality in India is. The NDA's electoral gains, not based on economic performance, rather it is far from it. It doesn't matter what happens to the economy. As I told you, whatever happens, अब पहले मनमोहन सिंह थे, बाद में अभी मोदी आ गए, कल मोदी को निकाल के उल्लू को बिठाई है प्राइम मिनिस्टर चेयर पे, तब भी इंडिया डेवलप होगा. प्लीज लाफ एट इट. इंडिया का मोमेंटम है, इकोनॉमिक मोमेंट. वो मोमेंटम इट कैनॉट बी डिसाइडेड बाय 1-2 पॉलिसीज or 1-2 prime minister. It is the people, it is the system which is changing, which decides economy. The faulty Gujarat economic model, the capitalistic economy, promoting the so-called crony capitalism, many different ways to define. So I don't want to get into it, but the economic system is creating huge inequity. Actually, inequity now compared to 10 years ago is more. The rich and poor, the Gini coefficients, if you want to compute, it is reversed. It was declining, now it is increased. However, there are high interstate and inter-regional economic differentials which persist. Now, this slide is the slide which touches up to my title of today's presentation. There is increasing social mistrust. Now, this is the most important thing for me. What is happening is, Muslims used to be there pre-independent period, independent ho gaya, Pakistan ban gaya. In spite of all that, Muslims were still part and parcel of the system which was going on. Why? They were there. People used to trust them. There could be some employment created. It is okay. For example, पुराने ज़माने में जो खान बाबा होते थे, वो, he could do very good security job. He can protect people. So 70s, 80s के ज़्यादा जो Muslims का वो था, I have read a recent book on Muslims in films. तो वो क्या करते थे कि वो बहुत अच्छे ख्यालात के ताकतवर खान साहब होते थे जो हिंदू लड़कियों को बचाते, वो दिखाता था पुराने फिल्मों. उसका मतलब ये है, there used to be a trust upon the Muslim community that they will protect the Hindus. In this case, filmy language में Hindu girl, Hindu बहन, Hindu माँ. अब ये ट्रस्ट खत्म हो गया. ये ट्रस्ट को खत्म कर रहा है बीजेपी और एनडीए. ये है सबसे बड़ी बीमारी. ये ट्रस्ट खत्म हो जाएगा. So that is the biggest जलालत जो नाजिल होगी मुसलमानों पे इंडिया में. अभी खत्म नहीं हुई है, हो रहा है. इस चीज के ऊपर तवज्जो देना जरूरी है. An economist, and I'm telling you this in an economic presentation, that the whole business, whole system, whole economy is built upon trust. वो ट्रस्ट खत्म हो. Re-invoking British policy to fight the enemy, Muslim identity became a sign of vulnerability exploited by radicals. The moment you find I was watching these, tiger or lion chasing a bunch of deer. And what kind of deer the tiger catches, the lion catches? The weakest, because the weakest cannot run faster, right? So मुसलमानों की वो हालत होगी. अभी वीक है तो हिंदू रेडिकल्स उन्हीं के ऊपर हावी हो रहे हैं, क्योंकि it is easy to scuttle them. So creating social mistrust in a manner to de-employ Muslims from many economic sectors, गवर्नमेंट तो जॉब नहीं दे रही है, वो अलग इश्यू है, उसके ऊपर बाद में आएंगे, अलग उससे सेमिनार होना पड़ेगा। मगर जो सोसाइटी के अंदर म्यूचुअल जॉब देना लेना, अब एक दुकान पे जा रहा है बच्चा, एक मुसलमान बच्चा, और पूछा कि मुझे वो साड़ियों बेचने का, कपड़े बेचने का वो ये काम दे दो। पहले काम मिलते थे, अब वो उनके ट्रस्ट नहीं है। तो तू मुसलमान है, नो, हमारे बिजनेस में तू अंदर नहीं आए। ये हमने देख चुके हैं कि दिल्ली में कारपेंटर्स, इलेक्ट्रिशियंस जो बड़े बड़े गेटेड सोसाइटीज के अंदर आते हैं, मैंने खुद ऑब्जर्व किया है कि ये मुसलमान लड़का अंदर आ रहा है, मगर जब वो रजिस्टर में नाम लिखता है तो राकेश लिख के आता है। उसका नाम राकेश नहीं है, उसका नाम अहमद है। क्यों? ट्रस्ट। वो मुसलमान है, नो। तो अब वो बोला क्या नाम है, राकेश, वो देखा भेज दिया। Now this is the biggest वो बोलते हैं ना cancer which is now maturing in India. Designating Muslim cultural practices as foreign, inhuman and even anti-national. Muslim का cultural practices anti-national हो गया. Calling Muslims barbarian meat eaters. While 80% of India is non-vegetarian. ये मीडिया का एक तस्वीर है, इंडिया वेजिटेरियन है। अरे सालो, 80% इंडियंस मीट खाते हैं, और वो 20% इंडियंस जो हैं हाई कास्ट के, उनमें भी मेरे बहुत सारे दोस्त हैं जो मीट खाते हैं। उसमें मेरे ऐसे भी दोस्त हैं जो बीफ खाना चाहते हैं, पर्सनल चॉइस है। सो इट इज हाइप दैट vegetarianism, India is a vegetarian country, is a hype, is a media creation. It is not reality. 1/2 of Indian population do not consider beef eating as taboo. मैं communities की लिस्ट देता हूं जो beef eating आज भी करेंगे। वो सिर्फ मुसलमान बीफ नहीं खाता, मुसलमान तो 15% है। 50% Hindus, if you take a picture, 50% of India's population, beef eating is not a taboo. नहीं खाया, खाने दूसरा खा रहा है, खाने दो। Now radical Hindutva onslaught is also now politically motivated laws बना रहा। ये बहुत ही सीरियस है। Ordinance, legislations, non-coherent social and economic policies. कोई coherence नहीं है, कोई नहीं। CAA is not needed in India. Without CAA, you can make the Hindus which are persecuted in Pakistan, Bangladesh, जो आना चाहते हैं, उनको CAA की कोई जरूरत नहीं है। उसको locally decide करके applications लेके उनको citizen बना सकते हैं। CAA is not needed to address the issue of persecuted Hindus from neighborhood countries. But the CAA बनाया गया इस लिहाज से कि we want to protect this Hindus from Pakistan, from Bangladesh and other places जो persecute हो रहे हैं, उनको protect करने के लिए। उनको protect करने के लिए CAA की जरूरत नहीं है, उनको protect करने के अपने local laws की जरूरत है, which are already there. You can just make a directive. India is open to all the persecuted Hindus who are coming to India to apply to the district collectors of that district, and district collector take an interview and he gives a certificate. It is the district collector who can make citizens, not India. Now they are also thinking of preparing a national register of citizens. India में citizenship register कैसे बन सकती है? It is like creating a social security number for United States. इंडिया के अंदर वो सोशल सिक्योरिटी के नंबर के अंदर योर बर्थडे, योर दिस वन, योर सो यू नीड टू गिव। इंडिया में आज भी अप टू 50% ऑफ Indians, whether Muslims or Hindus, they may not have birth certificates. बर्थ सर्टिफिकेट का जमाना तो 30-40 साल से अब शुरू हुआ है। आपके पहले तो बर्थ सर्टिफिकेट बनते ही नहीं थे। अभी भी जो the villages in the outbacks in UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, where the births occur in home, not in a hospital or a nursing home, still many of them will not have registered their births. So creating this national population register, what is the need for it? You already have electoral rolls. Electoral roll voting system के लिए बनाया हो गया है. Electoral rolls के basis पे you are winning elections. So what is the National Register of Citizens? National Register of Citizens कहते हैं कि the welfare benefits जो दे रहे हैं, so it is going to wrong people. All are people, all are whether wrong or right, all poor people are Indian people. So it is the government jobs to identify every one of them and give the benefit. So there is no need for National Register of Citizens. It's a useless exercise, at least for now. But next 30-40 years, because now every child which is born, institutional births are increasing. उनके births register हो जाएंगे. They will have a card later, and then they'll have an Aadhaar card which is more genuine. So over a period of time, these things will improve. You cannot improve this by a magic in two years, and this is what they are trying to do. And to do this, they also want to collect an illegal data collection activity. Government of India wants to do. I'm using the word illegal. Please read my articles in the front line. They want to create a national population register through Census of India. Census of India is a very great institution. It collects data for planning, etc., etc., etc. And there is a law, and that law, every citizen of this land, including Muslims, everybody, they abide by it. They share the information to census about who they are, what they do, what is their religion, what language they speak, how many children are there. Very important data for development. अब उसके अंदर मिलावट कर रहे हैं, illegal activity है, illegal national population register. वो national population register census का हिस्सा है ही नहीं, मगर census के अंदर उसको कलेक्ट कर रहे हैं. वो हिस्सा है दूसरे लॉ का, वो लॉ है सिटीजनशिप लॉ का. सिटीजनशिप लॉ में लिखा गया है कि रजिस्टर बनाना है. वो पिछले 60 साल से बन रहा है. अभी भी हम उसके लायक नहीं है. अभी 30-40 साल लगेंगे. तो आपको सिटीजनशिप नेशनल रजिस्टर ऑफ सिटीजन बना सकते हैं, मे बी इन 2040 और 2050 में बन सकता है. मगर अभी डेटा कलेक्ट सेंसस, वो भी सेंसस के द्वारा डेटा कलेक्ट कर रहे हैं, इलीगल एक्टिविटी है. और कोई इसको चैलेंज नहीं कर रहा, कोई इस बारे में बात नहीं कर रहा. ये क्यों इलीगल एक्टिविटी है जो मैं बता रहा हूं, वो भी उसको एनालाइज करने के लिए कम्युनिटी आज रेडी नहीं है. वो it is through this medium I invite people to know why collecting national population register data, NPR data, along with census is an illegal activity done by government of India on the sly, बताए बगैर, प्रॉपर रूल्स के बगैर, प्रॉपर लॉस के बगैर डेटा कलेक्ट करने जा रहे हैं. और डेटा नहीं देंगे तो हम मारेंगे तुम्हें, हम वो करेंगे, हम ये करेंगे, हम कुछ नहीं करेंगे. So now I have given that, and I am going towards strategies to overcome extreme level of discrimination. क्या strategies हो सकते हैं? मैं अभी next 10 minutes, and then I guess you will alert me to conclusion. Relative Muslim advantage. I have done lot of research on Muslims. I am the only person, I will challenge this, जो डेटा के माध्यम से, not सच्चर कमेटी से 25 साल पहले मेरा एक पेपर पब्लिश हुआ था इकोनॉमिक एंड पॉलिटिकल वीकली में. उस जमाने से हम बताए गए कि मुस्लिम्स के बारे में इन इंडिया देयर इज नो सेपरेट डेटा अवेलेबल. डेटा इज कलेक्टेड बट डेटा इज नॉट एनालाइज्ड. सो इट इज सच्चर कमेटी 10-12 साल हो गए, 12 years I think. And 20 years before Sachar Committee, when I started doing surveys in 1974, 75, 76, 1980, so I started looking into Muslims issue through data. उस डेटा के माध्यम से, through the understanding of data, I have understood something which I call relative Muslim advantage. Compared to, when I say relative Muslim advantage, Muslims are at a relatively better situation compared to other communities. What? Unique skill set, technological maneuverability. उनको नेगेटिव पॉजिटिव किस तरह से उसको यूज कर सकते हैं, कहाँ लगा सकते हैं, कहाँ ये कर सकते हैं, उसका शॉक लगे बिना उसको करना, उसको कॉलेज को जाने की जरूरत नहीं, इंजीनियरिंग डिग्री की जरूरत नहीं, वो अंडरस्टैंड कर लेता है. एंड somehow Muslim boys are good at it compared to others. Dexterity and efficiency, punctuality and timeliness, trust and accountability. These are the virtues of the Muslim community. We can go on details later. But along with that, if the Muslims have some more better understanding of economic input management efficiency, environmental sensibility, and understanding and utilizations of the rules and laws of the nation, they have relative advantages in certain type of advantages, and then these 2-3 additional, then they become almost unchallengeable. Now, what community can do? Strategize and organize. To do what? To bridge income gap, relative income gap, to bridge education gap, to bridge gender gap, to bridge political gap, and to bridge the social trust gap. These are very highly summarized statements. It doesn't mean anything. But the dimension which I am giving is, we have to think of how to improve incomes, how to improve education, how to bring women into the mainstream, how to improve political participation. And my next slide is on that. That is the biggest mistaken Muslim leadership issue. I will come to that, what it is. But now, through this, we have to also bridge the social trust gap, the social mistrust which is coming between Hindus and Muslims have to be reduced. How do we reduce that? We have to highlight relative economic productivity advantage of the Muslim community. I have a written paper on this. Please go to my book, Google Institutional Constitutional Right, chapter number 4, where 4 of us have used data. For 3 years, we worked to bring this data together to show that the Muslim labor force, on an average, controlling for all other factors, age, training, education, state. If you control all that, you give a task, economic task for 100 Muslim boys and compare them to 100 other children, other boys of any caste community, the Muslim productivity is higher. And this I have proved it. It is estimated using data. Now that relative economic productivity advantage, we have to use it to kick up the economic activity and Muslim contribution to our nation building, Muslim contribution to our India's growth.
Sharif Saab, as per your request, I am reminding you that you have 10 more minutes.
Right.
Thank
Now,
you.
there is a catalytic association between education and productivity. We have to also enhance scientific temper and English education in English. सिर्फ सर सैयद का नाम लेते हैं, उनका वो बर्थडेज मनाते हैं, मगर उनका जो आइडियोलॉजी था कि इंग्लिश एजुकेशन इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू मुस्लिम्स, हम फिर भूल गए. हम फिर मदरसा एजुकेशन के पीछे भाग रहे हैं. अरे भाई कुरान पढ़ाने वाले, अरे कुरान पढ़ाने वाले पढ़ाएंगे भी, इंग्लिश भी पढ़ना जरूरी है, मशीन भी चलाना है, प्लेन भी उड़ाना है, ट्रेनों भी कुछ भी चलाना है. Empowerment is misunderstood. Now, I am making some controversial statement. I am very aware of it. People may become angry and you have a right to become angry, but you can always debate. Political empowerment bolte hi, we Muslim community, we start competing. Are bhai, how many MPs are there? हाउ मेनी एमएलएस? अरे एटलीस्ट एमएलएस एमपीस तो नहीं होंगे तो कम से कम चेयरमैन कितने हैं भाई वो डिपार्टमेंट, अरे वक्फ बोर्ड उसके चेयरमैन, ये गिनने लगता है मुसलमान. बट द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट, the second higher level of political leadership is a kind of creating and organizing Muslim oriented political party. These are the two levels in which Muslim is thinking about political empowerment. Now, I am going to tell you that both of them is a fallacy. So what is political empowerment? Political empowerment happens when community increases its vote share through higher voting percentages. मुझे कौन बताए थे, ये एक फार्मर्स लीडर अभी जो है योगेंद्र यादव. योगेंद्र यादव 15 साल पहले मुझे बुला के बोले, शरीफ तू एक चीज देखना. क्या? अरे सक्सेसिव इलेक्शंस, जनरल इलेक्शन में मुसलमानों का वोटिंग शेयर कम हो रहा है. He has seen this. He had this data and he invited me to study that. 15 साल पहले. तो मुसलमान वोटिंग को नहीं जाता है, एमपीस गिनने लगता है, एमएलएस गिनने लगता है, मगर वोटिंग को जाता नहीं है. So political empowerment happens, we increase voting share. Secondly, political empowerment participation happens when Muslims join the grassroots level institution. अपने पंचायत, अपनी म्युनिसिपालिटी, अपने घरों के अतराफ जो कमिटीज होते हैं उसके अंदर भागीदारी, उसके भागीदारी मुसलमान अलग होता है. वो बोलता है ये बगल वाला हिंदू है, वो ग्रुप में नहीं जाएंगे. ये है जो मुसलमान की आइडेंटिटी को खत्म करेगा. Now, political empowerment happens when organize and create, this is very important, organize and create developmental and non-political institutions such as occupation on or trade-based associations. This is the biggest opportunity we have. इकोनॉमी बढ़ने वाली है. अब उसके अंदर मुस्लिम्स जो ऑक्यूपेशंस करते हैं, जो भी जिस भी तरह के, वो ऑक्यूपेशन बेस्ड एसोसिएशंस बना रहे हैं. अभी तो मॉस्क बेस्ड एसोसिएशंस बनते हैं. ये मस्जिद है, मस्जिद कमेटी बना ले. ये मदरसे चला रहे हैं, अच्छी बात है मदरसा. ये काफी नहीं है. प्रोडक्शन सिस्टम, हमारा इकोनॉमी, हमारा वो जो है उसके अंदर एसोसिएशन बनाने हैं जो गवर्नमेंट भी चाहती है कि उनके सब्सिडीज को रूट आउट करने के लिए इस तरह के एसोसिएशंस की जरूरत पड़ती है. Then political empowerment also happens when Muslims understand that Hindus can also be well-wishers of Muslims and Hindus can also be our leaders in democracy. ये जो बात है ना, अरे ये हिंदू है, ये हमारा क्या करेगा, यही तो खत्म कर रहा है. हिंदूस हमारे लीडर्स बन सकते हैं डेमोक्रेसी. और दूसरा, मुस्लिम्स जनरली मेन स्ट्रीम इश्यूज जो होते हैं उसके अंदर भागीदारी नहीं होती. जैसा कि एनवायरमेंटल इशू, देयर इज इशू ऑन हेल्थ, एजुकेशन, एग्रीकल्चर. During the COVID, I saw some very important Muslim participation in feeding people. थोड़ा सा महसूस हुआ है 1 or 2 cities में, मगर जनरली मुसलमान जो मेन स्ट्रीम इशू होते हैं उसके अंदर भागीदारी लेने के लिए आगे नहीं बढ़ता. Now, my last slide on this before I conclude is मैं यहाँ पे एक बहुत अच्छा मैं स्लाइड बनाया हूं जिसमें हमारे एक मित्र हैं अमिताभ कुंडू, जो बहुत अच्छा डाइवर्सिटी इंडेक्स पे जो इशरत आपा बता रही थी उसका रिपोर्ट उन्होंने लिखा है. उन्होंने एक मेथोडोलॉजी दी है कि मुस्लिम शेयर को एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट, यूनिवर्सिटीज, डिपार्टमेंट्स, इस तरह की जगह बढ़ाना है. तो हाउ टू कंप्यूट द डाइवर्सिटी इंडेक्स, ऑलरेडी मेथोडोलॉजी इज गिवन. हम दोनों एक रामलीला देखने गए थे, मैं, मेरी और फैमिली और अमिताभ साहब की. तो हम वहां देखे कि एक मौत का कुआं होता है जहां पे 2 बच्चे जो है ना मोटरसाइकिल के अंदर इतनी तेजी से दौड़ते हैं, इतनी तेजी से कि आंखों को नजर नहीं आते. तो हम दोनों देख रहे थे और उसके बाद अमिताभ ने कहा, यार ये देखो कितनी हिम्मत है इन लोगों में, अपनी जान की परवाह किए बगैर ये काम करते हैं। मैंने उसी वक्त उनको बोला, अमीर साहब आप बता सकते हैं कि वो कौन है लड़के? मैंने उनको बोला मुझे 100% गारंटी है वो दोनों मुसलमान। ऐसा कैसा हो सकता है, रामलीला तो चल रहा है यहाँ पे। मैंने बोला नहीं सर, जाके देखेंगे। तो उसके बाद वो शो खत्म हुआ, हम दोनों गए, वो दोनों बच्चों को बात कर, दोनों मुसलमान थे। तो बाद में हम वापस आगे बात करके उनकी तारीफ करके बाद में मैंने बोला ये 2 बच्चे हैं, इतनी जोखिम ले सकते हैं चंद रुपये कमाने के लिए, 100, 200, 500 रुपये कमाने के लिए, उसका गलत इस्तेमाल नहीं कर सकते हम इन दोनों का। तो मुस्लिम वल्नरेबल हैं, उनको बहुत आसानी से एक्सप्लॉइट कर सकते हैं, अच्छे काम को भी एक्सप्लॉइट कर सकते हैं, बुरे काम को भी एक्सप्लॉइट करेंगे। इसीलिए मुसलमानों की संख्या प्रिजन में ज्यादा क्यों, चोर चक्के ज्यादा, गन तलवार ये बम ज्यादा ये खुद जाके बम ले जाके डालेंगे कहीं? नो, कोई देगा इनको बम ले जाके डालेंगे। ये इश्यू है मुसलमानों में, इसको कैसे एड्रेस करेंगे हमको सोचना चाहिए। नाउ करंट कम्युनिटी रिस्पांस जो है वो पॉलिटिकल पार्टी टाइप है, उसको छोड़ के पॉलिटिकल पार्टिसिपेशन में जाना चाहिए। हमें स्ट्रैटेजिक फ्यूचर के लिए एस्टैब्लिश एक्सेसिबल लीगल एड सेल्स इन ईच, एटलीस्ट 1 in each डिस्ट्रिक्ट। डेटा इकट्ठा करना चाहिए ऑन द मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी रिलेटेड टू अदर्स, एंड फॉल्स न्यूज को डील करने के लिए हमको डेटा चाहिए। डेटा का अभाव है एंड वी हैव टू वर्क टुवर्ड्स कलेक्टिंग दोस डेटा। I have also one request to the American Muslim NRIs. Establish research fellowship in all, there are 600, 700 universities. एक यूनिवर्सिटी में एक रिसर्च फेलोशिप to do exclusive research on the social and economic educational conditions of Muslims. हर यूनिवर्सिटी में एक फेलोशिप देनी चाहिए। गवर्नमेंट कुछ दे रही है, मगर यहाँ से जो है we can go and sponsor one research fellowship in every university, at least to begin with. Target 10 यूनिवर्सिटी अगले साल कर लो और 10 अगले साल कर लो, कुछ ऐसा कर सकते हैं, which is very important. We have to create literature on Indian Muslims. And then Muslims highlight Muslim art and culture on nationalistic and secular values. मुस्लिम का जो आइडियालॉजी है, हिस्ट्री है, वो दबी जा रही है, उसको उभारने के लिए वी हैव टू डू समथिंग एल्स। नाउ फॉर्मलाइज ए नेशनल स्ट्रेटजी, फॉर्मलाइज करना चाहिए। अक्सर आता है कि मुस्लिम्स एंड शेड्यूल कास्ट और एक जैसे हैं, हम दोनों का पॉलिटिकल पार्टिसिपेशन होना चाहिए। मैं आज इस सेमिनार के माध्यम से उन लोगों को मैं बताऊंगा, इंक्लूडिंग असद वोइस जैसे लोगों को जो हैं कि शेड्यूल कास्ट लोग और मुस्लिम लोग मिलके बन सकते हैं। उसका एक लिमिट है, ये सक्सेस नहीं होगा, क्योंकि एससीस और एसटीस का जो गवर्नमेंट का एक सिस्टम है, कोटा सिस्टम वगैरह, प्रमोशंस करना, उनको जॉब्स देना कोटा सिस्टम में, वो सिस्टम ऐसा बना दिया है कि पॉलिटिकली मुस्लिम्स and Dalits and tribals cannot join together. They will never be together because of the competitive quota politics. वो एक लंबा इश्यू है, मगर मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट जो मैं कंक्लूड कर रहा हूं अभी, इम्प्रूव सोशल स्टैंडिंग एंड ट्रस्ट। इंडियन बॉयज, इंडियन विमेन, इंडियन यंग का जो ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट हो रहा है, वो ट्रस्ट को हमको इंप्रूव करना है। हम किस तरह से करेंगे? अंडरस्टैंडिंग लोकलाइज बजट इज इंपॉर्टेंट, एम्पावरिंग ग्रास रूट लेवल सिविल सोसाइटी, अंडरस्टैंडिंग स्टैट्यूटरी एंटाइटलमेंट्स, प्रोग्राम्स एंड पॉलिसीज, कम्युनिटी लीडर्स, सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एंड मोटिवेशन, develop social networking channels and integrate communities in the larger frame of social contract and enhance social stand. ये सोशल नेटवर्किंग, व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप सिर्फ मुसलमानों के, ये नहीं चलेगा जना, इंडिया में नहीं चलेगा और चलना भी नहीं चाहिए। मैं खुद उसके फेवर में। We have to jump into the national issues. We are part of our nation building. और अपने एनवायरनमेंट, अपने लोकल इश्यूज को उभारना है, ये इतना ही मेरा काम है जितना कि मेरे हिंदू भाई है. Prevail on evidence-based policy and augment legal support. Exclusive demands are less likely to succeed. Rewrite our vision and mission statements of Muslim associations and Muslim educational institutions. And promote gender. जब तक विमेन को हम आगे नहीं लेंगे, मेन स्ट्रीम में नहीं लेंगे, मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी कभी नहीं बदल पाएगी. And aping the religious leader is the biggest mistake the Muslim community is doing. Religious leader नहीं, नमाज पढ़ाइए साहब, हम पीछे आके सजदा करेंगे आपके, उतना ही काम है, उससे आगे आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते इंडिया के मुसलमानों को बचाने के लिए. वो तो एक मेन स्ट्रीम एक्टिविटी, एक सिस्टमैटिक असिमिलेशन ऑफ मुस्लिम्स विद द लार्जर कम्युनिटी कैन address that. Muslim religious leader cannot address that issue. With that, I want to say thank you. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you, Saleh.
And there is a request here for PowerPoint. I will send this version to Razi Bhai, and Razi Bhai can share.
Thank you, Saleh Saab. It was really a wonderful talk with a lot of substance, a lot of take-home messages, and hopefully some of them we will try to implement, try to follow. And now I'll just take another 30 seconds to just have an announcement for the upcoming Saturday talk, and then we will have a formal question and answer session, which will be moderated by our colleague, Dr. Rafat Hussain. So, and that will last for 30 minutes. So this is our coming Saturday talk. We are inviting two very popular, what you call human rights activists and political personalities. One is Mr. Muhammad Adib Saab, who is a former MP of Rajya Sabha and also a very popular student leader while at Aligarh Muslim University. He has recently started a cable network also in India called Savera Network. And along with him, his partner now in this discourse is our very popular Professor Vipin Kumar Tripathi, who is no stranger to us here in United States. He is still an honorary professor of plasma physics at IIT Delhi and founder of Sadbhav Mission. And the opening remarks will be given by very activist young fellow, Shireen. She's a co-director of Peace Vigil. And I think, as I remember, a daughter of Dr. Shamsul Islam. So with this, I hand over it to Rafat. Rafat, please carry on.
Thank you, Razi Bhai, and thank you, Saleh Saab or Sharif Saab, for a very thoughtful and analytical talk. So there are two options of asking questions, and please, you can raise your digital hand. And if you don't know that, you can say that I do have a question in a chat box, and I will note down your name and will give you the opportunity to ask the question. So a couple of names are already there, so please be ready. The first person is Tariq Farooqi. After that is Shafiq Bandagi, and then Ishrat Hussain, Ishrat Apa has a comment. So let's see. Begin with Tariq Farooqi. So please unmute yourself. Faisal, hold on. Faisal, can you please check if the person's I name are already there or not? Tariq Bhai, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just unmuted myself and I hope you can hear me. Thanks for a very informative lecture. It was thought-provoking and very interesting. I have two quick observations leading to a question. One, I read several places that disposable income among laborers and working class is now less now than in the past 45 years. And if that is true, then the second observation is religious extremism leads to economic disaster. Just look at the other countries in the neighborhood of India. So if those two things are true, so how will the Indian economy continue to grow, as you suggest, if it is dominated by religious extremists as it has in the last 4 or 5 years?
Right. Can I take a bundle of questions, maybe 3 at a time?
Okay, sure. Hold on. Shafiq Bandagi Saab and then Fauzan Majid. Shafiq Bandagi, please unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Saab, for a very thoughtful presentation from you. The very first point you started your presentation was with the trust, losing trust among the community. There are two-pronged reasons behind it. Number one is the Muslim community itself is the degenerating moral values among the Muslim community, and number two is the constant bashing, constant propaganda by the Sangh Parivar. Actually, they have been doing this for the past 100 years. Now the advent of social media has exaggerated the trauma. Actually, they are benefiting from that. So on one hand, we are trying to reform our community, our Muslim community, so that they earn more trust of the community. But how can we deal when constantly there is bashing and there's misinformation being propagated through all the social media and spoiling the minds of the youth, the Hindu youth? This is the biggest ammunition for them. Actually, they always keep doing this. That's how they are gaining the votes, and all the
Thank you, Shafiq
secular
Saab.
Muslims have been,
Shafiq Saab, we got the point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next person is.
Okay, brother, just let me just finally conclude this one. Whatever the solution Dr. Saab has mentioned, with 2% of just less than 2% of the educated,
you have to only raise questions, not
come to the question, because we know the background. No. Please, Shafiq Saab, because there are only 30 minutes.
I'm finishing my question. I'm finishing my question. Please, just one more line. With 2% of less than 2% of population, how can we implement? How can we take any solutions to our community? That's my question.
Thank you, Shafiq Saab.
Thank you.
I will give a chance to Ishrat Apa later, but right now Fauzan Majid, because Ishrat Apa has a comment. So.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fauzan. I'm speaking from Bangalore. Abu Saleh Sharif Saab, congratulations that you have been always in the forefront, giving this type of thoughtful lectures and this thing. But when you come on the implementation side, especially on the politics, and especially with the Muslim politics Muslim type of the OSC type of politics increasing, the acute damage that it is being that is being done by these type of politicians. How do we stop it? How do we put this thing? And you raised another issue that the religious people should be restricted to the religious field. Well, then that's very hard to achieve. They poke their noses in every aspect of our lives. How is that we do that? In spite of me being a very conservative and religious person, I still find them a misfit. How is that we implement it? How is that we bring in that change?
Thank you. So those who raise their hands, I have noted down their names. So don't worry, you are noted. You don't have to re-raise your hand again or raise hand again. So Sharif Saab, you want to take all these people now? These questions?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. All are very relevant and of course very mature questions. Let me try to reply. Somebody said on the trust issue, how can a small number of community can improve the trust? And I think they said 2% of population. Actually, we are 15% of population. 15% in proportion but we are 200 million people. 200 million, which is a large population. Actually, probably even we are larger in Indonesia, which is so we may be the largest Muslim population of any given country, followed by Indonesia and then Pakistan and then Bangladesh. So we are a large population. So please don't forget. But what the BJP has tried to do is it has made the Muslim votes irrelevant. So they don't give tickets to Muslims, whether for MPs or state level MLAs. They say, "Aapka vote bhi nahi chahiye." So how do they win the votes? Because making the Muslim as an enemy, they woo the innocent Hindus to vote for them. So there is a vote swing. So election के टाइम पे ये बातें ज्यादा होते हैं, वो इसलिए होते हैं कि they want to woo their vote bank. And in this process, because 80% of them are Hindus, there is nothing called Hindus in India. अगर मुसलमान नहीं होता तो हिंदू भी नहीं होता, बिकॉज कास्ट होते, हजारों किस्म के डिफरेंट कास्ट ग्रुप्स होते. जब मुसलमान आ गया, मुसलमान का आइडियोलॉजी आ गया, तो जो मुस्लिम आइडियोलॉजी फॉलो नहीं कर रहे थे हिस्टोरिकली, वो सब हिंदू बने एक तरह से, एक्सेप्टिंग द क्रिश्चियंस एंड स्मॉल नंबर ऑफ minorities. So the issue here is it is easy for the Hindu radicals to isolate the Muslims. और उनको, मुसलमानों को भी मुस्लिम आइसोलेशन बहुत प्यारा लगता है. मस्जिद है, मस्जिद की तरफ हम घर बना लेंगे और अपना एक गेटो बना लिया और बोला कि अरे हम यहाँ सेफ हैं भाई, यहाँ 200 मुसलमान के घर हैं, हम सेफ हैं. I know I'm not telling it is right or wrong, but एक मुस्लिम्स गेटो में रहता है. वो गेटो में रहने की वजह से हमारा जो मेन स्ट्रीम जो इंडिया है, जो बहुत बड़ा है, बहुत खुशहाल है, we have no knowledge about it. We don't know that culture, but we have to live in that place, but we don't know that culture. तो ये जो हिंदू रेडिकल्स के लिए ये बहुत आसान हो गया कि मुस्लिम देखो वो मेन स्ट्रीम में आता नहीं है, अपना ही पाकिस्तान बना रहा है, हर गांव में एक पाकिस्तान हो गया, और मुसलमान भी खुश है उसके अंदर. तो ये प्रॉब्लम जो है इनवर्ड लुकिंग मुस्लिम, इसको हम गुत्थी को निकालना है. तो हमको आउटवर्डली होना है. वो आउटवर्डली होने के लिए हमारा एजुकेशन और हमारा मेन स्ट्रीम इकोनॉमिक पार्टिसिपेशन हैज टू बी अवे, एंड आई एम नॉट टेलिंग गेट आउट, बट मोर टुवर्ड्स द बिग मार्केट. पूरी दुनिया इंडिया को आती है क्योंकि इंडिया हैज द लार्जेस्ट मार्केट टुडे. जो मुसलमान वहां है वो उसको मार्केट पता नहीं है, वो वही चीज बनाता है जो मुसलमानों को पसंद है. मगर so now we need innovation in our employment. I am aware of the issue of declining income, disposable income, because of the COVID and other issues. And secondly, I have computed and already published these results that if systematic exclusion of Muslims from mainstream occupation, जो भी थोड़े बहुत mainstream occupations हैं, और जो मुस्लिम्स के डोमिनेंट ऑक्यूपेशंस पे हिंदूज का कब्जा हो रहा है अभी, तो वो उसके अंदर इंडिया को 2% जीडीपी अफेक्ट होगा. बिकॉज देयर आर अबाउट 100 million मुस्लिम लेबर फोर्स, बट अलॉन्ग विथ 100 million मुस्लिम लेबर फोर्स अनदर 100 million हिंदू लेबर फोर्स, यानी 200 million मुस्लिम लेबर फोर्स का प्रोडक्टिविटी 10-20-30% गिर जाएगा, इकोनॉमी में 2% का घाटा होगा. मगर प्रॉब्लम यह है कि इंडिया का ग्रोथ 8%, 9%, 10% फिर हो जाएगा अगले 3 साल में. तो वो 2% का घाटा जो है वो उसके अंदर उन्होंने रेडिकल हिंदुत्व ने बोला नहीं, हम 2% घाटा बर्दाश्त करेंगे, मगर मुसलमानों को वहां गेटोस में डालेंगे. Instead of 10% हम 8% में चढ़ाएंगे, मगर 8% of growth itself is also very high compared to the international levels. So the issue of India's growth is in its people, numbers. Now the Muslim politics religious people's reaction, how to restrict it, ये तो कम्युनिटी का काम है. ये हमें, मैं पिछले 1 साल में, मैं अभी इंडिया से आए हुए 2 महीने ही हुए, मैं पूरा लॉकडाउन पीरियड से पहले सब इंडिया में था, मैं दिल्ली में, बैंगलोर में. तो I attended some unexpected meetings. I don't want to get the details. I have nothing against religious leadership if they understand the economic structure. देखिए, ह्यूमन लाइफ निर्भर है, आइडेंटिटी पे नहीं है. इकोनॉमिक प्रोडक्शन, इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम के ऊपर लाइफ निर्भर है, अपनी आइडेंटिटी पे. आइडेंटिटी जरूरी है हमारे, मगर आपकी आइडेंटिटी दाना पानी खाना पानी नहीं देगा, उसके लिए आपको इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रक्चर चाहिए. तो मेरा एक ही प्रॉब्लम है कि जो रिलीजियस लीडर है सिर्फ वो अपने आइडेंटिटी के इश्यूज उभार रहा है. इकोनॉमिक इश्यू बताइए, कौन सा हमारा लीडर इकोनॉमिक इश्यू पे बात कर रहा है जो रिलीजियस ओरिएंटेड है?
वो सब अपना अपना काम कर रहे हैं.
जो पॉलिटिकल ओरिएंटेड है वो मुस्लिम्स को वोट बैंक बना रहा है. अब वहां पे ऐसा सिचुएशन आता है बिहार में कि हो सकता था कि ये पर्टिकुलर पॉलिटिकल पार्टी कंटेस्ट ना करती तो वहां पे सेक्युलर गवर्नमेंट होती आज. अब ये इश्यू को एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, और समझदारी ये है, आई नो असद भाई वेरी वेल, इज अ वेरी गुड फ्रेंड ऑफ माइन. समझदारी ये है कि शेड्यूल कास्ट वोट उनको मिल जाएंगे, जीत जाएंगे, वो लोकलाइज लेवल पे हो सकता है, मगर ऑल इंडिया लेवल स्ट्रैटेजी नहीं सक्सेस होगी. आई विल चैलेंज हिम.
Sharif Saab, we already have 20 minutes for 3 questions, and there are 8 more people lined up.
Okay.
So please
now,
be brief.
So hold on. So now the issue of how to deal with I'm not against religious people becoming leaders, but religious people have to raise the right issues, at least उस तवज्जो के ऊपर. So इसीलिए मैं in my presentation I bring emphasis, please understand the gender women issue is going to address economic issue much more dominantly than the men raising those issues. So if you bring women into your decision making, into your political participation, into your social participation, the right kind of life and living issue, bread and butter issues will be raised in the system.
साले साहब,
Thank you, Saleh Saab.
थोड़ा ब्रीफ में रहे और ब्रीफली आंसर में आप और लोगों को आंसर.
Yeah, and I also request the questioners, please be brief. And Sharif Saab also. Next person is Kalim Khwaja, after that Arvind Ansari, and then Haris Azmi. So Kalim Khwaja Saab, please. Unmute yourself, and Haris and Arvind, so please be ready. Khwaja Saab, good to go.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Abdul Sharif Saab. A great presentation, very wide-ranging, very thoughtful. I have one question, which is that when I look at the last 30 years and the attitude of secular parties towards Muslims, and then I look at the previous 30 years, I see that in the last 30 years, secular parties are not encouraging Muslims to become leaders within the party.
Okay, so next person is Arvind Ansari. So Sharif Saab will handle 3 questions at a time.
Thank you, Razi Saab. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I would really congratulate Professor Abu Saleh Sharif, and it's always pleasure to listen to you, sir. And I also salute your optimism. You have strong faith, and you say that Indian economy is very dynamic economy. But looking at the incidences, what has happened, the kind of polarization which is happening, and the way Muslims are being marginalized. So, the very important thing for minority is opportunity, equality, and dignity. The opportunity is not being provided, dignity is being attacked from all sides. So, in this context, when we look at the incidents which had happened in last year, because I teach in Jamia, so I see the psyche of the youth is completely, traumatized. It's very difficult to bring them. Every youth, especially Muslim youth, whether it's a girl or a boy, wants to quit India.
Thank you. So, Haris Azmi, please.
Thank you. My question goes back to the very fundamental issue that people raise and mention, that education is acknowledged to be one of the main sources of fighting these issues that we keep talking about within the community in India. But one of the things that I have seen many people talk about, and in some contexts, I feel like people put down madrasa and the madrasa education. And so my comment is on that. So is it assumed that, and maybe there's some assumption that if kids do not go to madrasa, they have to go to a better, more modern education. My assumption is that probably they would not even attain that education that they get in madrasa. My angle then is it not better, and I know it's a Herculean task, is it not better to take advantage of those network of madrasas that exist in India to somehow convince them to adopt a more modern, more comprehensive curriculum as part of their madrasa education, so that you have within a generation a transformation, which otherwise is a very, very difficult task to start from scratch.
Okay, so please go ahead, Sharif sir.
Right. Important questions again. So let me, where did I write this? This whole issue of education, I'll come to the issue of which Arvind Ansari raised the issue. So let me start with education. See, a couple of months ago, I think it is Ambassador Islam Siddiqui, who lives in Washington. He wrote to me, and in fact, we were in the same Zoom meeting on the issue of madrasa. And then he asked me to create some data on madrasa. Then I spent a few weeks to explore the government records and try to find out how many madrasas are there in India and how many children go to madrasa. So in Muslim meetings like this, we talk madrasa, 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 madrasa. How many million times we say madrasa? So we found out that the number of madrasas are very few compared to what is needed for Indian Muslim children. And Sachar Committee itself estimated at that time that only 3% of the Indian Muslim children, boys and girls of that school-going age, go to madrasa. So 97%, 95% of Muslims do not go to madrasa. They may go to maktabs like in Kerala. Morning में maktab में जाते हैं, अरब भी पढ़ लेते हैं स्कूल के बगल में, बाद में स्कूल जाते हैं. There is no problem in that. So now, why we are still talking about madrasa? Because very few children go. जो मदरसे में जाने वाले उनको जाने दीजिए ना. जो मदरसे हैं उनको करने दीजिए, जो भी करना है कर दीजिए. मदरसे के सामने एक अच्छी स्कूल खोलिए ना आप. In 3 years' time, all the madrasa children will be in your school. Don't close madrasas. Don't do anything. Don't improve them. You just open a school in front of a madrasa. Run for 3 years. 3 years के बाद madrasa के बच्चे पूरे school में आ जाएंगे. That is the strategy. It is not to confront this institution. I'm not telling you that. Now, the secular parties are not encouraging leaders. So, Kalim Khaja Sahab, you have misunderstood my whole presentation. मेरे presentation में मैंने एक चीज रखी है कि economic empowerment doesn't occur by counting MPs, MLAs and other people who are already in position. No. Economic empowerment happens when Muslims come in large numbers to vote. It doesn't matter whom they vote. But they have to vote. Their vote share is now less than the Hindu's vote share. मेरे ख्याल से Muslim vote share, I'm just guessing, but we have to work it out, is not more than 50%, 55%, 60% तो नहीं होगा. So if Muslims do not come out to vote, अब problem क्या हो रहा है कि हमारी आइडियोलॉजिकल डिमांड्स ये हैं कि अगर मुसलमान होगा इलेक्शन वोटर्स लिस्ट में तो मुसलमान जाके वोट देगा। ये स्थिति मुसलमानों को महदूद कर दिया पॉलिटिकल एम्पावरमेंट। अरे कोई मुसलमान नहीं है, कोई किसको जाके वोट देंगे, ये ख्यालात। व्हाई
Gulbarga is a good example
like
where
that in India?
Mallikarjun Kharge lost.
I don't care whether he lost or gone. I don't care. I don't think Kharge is going to protect Muslims. Okay, I don't believe in these people. The Muslims can be protected by political participation in the local governments, in the local areas में participate कीजिए. If Kharge doesn't, let him go to hell. I don't care. I know Kharge very well. I'm not
Professor
Congress party आपको नहीं बचाएगी.
Sharif, there is example of Delhi Chief Minister.
आपको नहीं बचाएगी, आपको बचाएगी आपके हिंदू.
Hold on, Ansari madam, hold on. Yeah.
So coming to Arvind Ansari's this one, she gave a very good example of what happened, how the youth is disoriented. With folded hands, I am going to tell you something which is very important. There is a strong philosophical and theoretical support within Delhi and within Indian thinkers that Muslims should not agitate or demand or work towards, certain objectives. In this case, CAA protest किया गया वहां पे. I'm aware of it. I visited But the point is, why is that the Jamia students do not fight when do not come and fight on the road when the post and the pre-metric जो money, scholarship जो दे रहे थे after such a committee, all states started giving this money. Now since the BJP has come, they have stopped giving it, money diverted. Why is that the community?
No, there was a participation.
No, wait a minute. So what I am trying to say is that CAA is important. I know CAA is a draconian act. I know we have to fight. I was also there. But we have to also fight for other things.
Yes, of course.
So the group equity issue को डिस्ट्रॉय कर रहे हैं. ग्रुप के अंदर मुसलमान जाएगा तो उसको एंटी नेशनल करके उनको प्रिजन में डालेगा. ये मैसेज जा रहा है दिल्ली में. दिस इज टू ब्रेक द यूनिटी ऑफ द मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी, टू एजिटेट एंड टू प्रोटेस्ट, एंड उसके खिलाफ हमको लड़ना है.
Thank you, Sharif Saab. Let's move on. So there are couple of more names and then we will stop there. Sayyid Amir, Faisal Beg, Dawood Mia Khan, Siddiqui, Usman Ghani. So we will entertain only those questions and then we will wind up. So Sayyid Amir Saab, unmute yourself. Let me try. Okay, Amir Saab, I requested you to unmute. No. Let me try again. Faisal?
Everyone should be able to unmute themselves, but let me try.
Okay, so let's move on to Faisal Beg. In the meantime, Amir Bhai will try to unmute. Go ahead, Faisal Beg.
Okay, so I'm from Delhi, and Sharif Saab, I know you through NCER, and later on I worked at the World Bank on different issues with Gary Purcell. So I'm quite aware of the work that you've been doing. So I think you touched on many issues, and they're all very relevant. And also, I think the issue is how to move forward. And there's this whole vicious cycle that is going on, I think. And there is this political economy you mentioned. I think one of the things that you suggested for the diaspora to kind of participate and act on is this, I think, at maybe beginning with 10 universities and going further to work on many issues. When studying, I think, certain issues relating to the community at each of those universities. My feeling is that might get into, I think, controversial mode again. I think this diaspora can support activities of the kind that I was just watching a couple of days back about Ruha Shadab, who is a young, I think she's a medical graduate, then she went to Harvard, come back, and she's working on some aspects of empowering women through, I think, opportunities, economic opportunities, startup and things of that kind. And I think visible and non-communal type of initiatives which are empowering in nature, which could invite participation from many other groups and communities. And I strongly believe that there is a lot of trust and I think faith that you can count upon from many different communities, which definitely is going to be the way forward. And I think we need to really focus on those aspects in terms of how to sort of, rather than I think focusing on the negative, how to move forward in terms of visible, action-oriented, non-communal type of initiatives is very, very important. So thank you.
Thank you, Faisal sir. Amir bhai.
Thank you, Sharif Saab. I'm very impressed. I think you have covered a lot of things I was thinking about or planning to ask you, because I think you have given a very comprehensive talk. The only comment I would like to make is that I was especially impressed because you have not promoted the philosophy of victimhood. You have not tried to denounce everybody else and we are fine. Very nice. The second point I also admire is that you had the courage to say that it's not the place for religious leaders to come and lead the Muslim community. That's true for all subcontinent, India, Pakistan, and I have seen the situation. Same thing, disastrous leadership of the religious leaders who do not have the capability. And finally, I want to say that, yes, it is amazing how the politics have come around after years. Things are similar to what Sir Sayyid faced a long time ago. We are withdrawing with our own community. And I think it's especially important that you emphasize that we're not going to succeed by pursuing a separate agenda. We have to be part of larger community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Amir bhai. Dawood Mia Khan, please unmute yourself. And Siddiqui. Okay, go ahead, Dawood Mia.
Yes. Thank you very much, Abdullah Sharif Saab. I have been hearing your lectures in the last couple of years. There is one the question I have is on CRDDP. You before the last parliamentary election, you with the NGO CRDDP, which you found very effectively, to some extent, effectively in various parts of the country. I think a movement was launched on missing voters, particularly with the slogan not a voter is left behind. In fact, in Tamil Nadu also we carried forward this movement and that benefited. Now we are facing the assembly elections in Tamil Nadu and there are certain part. Is this movement still alive, and is this some kind of data which can we continue to get this data from this CRDDP now? That's one question. Second question, there is a big surge which you see among the Muslim women, the young women. They are exceedingly performing well. And yesterday, I think you would have seen that in the All India Chartered Accountants examination, one girl from Maharashtra, underprivileged Muslim girl, she came first. And even 1 or 2 years earlier, also a Muslim boy came first in a similar exam. And in Kerala, it is surprisingly, there is a big surge. People are passing in IAS and other competitive exams in science sector also. They are doing very well. And I think it is happening all over India. And it is my personal feeling is that is the main resistance which was coming from their own family under some pretext of religion or something. And that is being slowly getting rid of. And I think, as you rightly said, until there is a gender, the women's empowerment is there, the community will not come. I think there has to be a movement, and you have to give more stress and guidelines on this system. And at the same time, being a correspondent of a
please conclude.
sentence. I am a correspondent of a college. I have seen.
I can see that.
The students, boys, cargo, the quality of the boys' education and empowerment is considerably going down, and we have to do something on that.
Thank you very much. Sharif Saab, please take these 3 questions.
Right.
Syed Amir, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Dawood Saab, I know him very well. Thank you to reminding me that very important work we did about 2 years ago. No voter left behind. This we did during the Karnataka elections. We had to get into the computers of the Election Commission of the Government of Karnataka. We found out a lot of lapses. We found out discrimination in creating electoral list. We brought this to the knowledge of the Election Commissioner in India. I had 3 meetings with the Election Commissioner in India. Yaswai Qureshi Sahab, who himself was Election Commissioner, he was with us for many discussions. And that created very good results. Government yielded, and they had a special enrollment drive in Karnataka before the election for a particular period. They open up one full day with full advertisements in newspaper that 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the evening, anybody who can come there and they can enroll themselves and vote during the forthcoming election. Now we try to do that, and this shows that if we work, it is possible to improve the vote share of the Muslim community across India. But it is a very Herculean task. It is a big task. Actually, such work has to be done by government itself. But because of the prejudice and because of the discrimination which government system particularly carries against Muslim, this is not being done. So I urge the people who are listening today, particularly to Razi Bhai and Apa, to formulate a kind of a small group as to how can we as intellectuals guide and bring, maybe through negotiations, maybe through preparing proper documents with data, maybe if necessary with the legal support structure, how can we influence the electoral improvement in the electoral rolls where Muslim men and women are documented. We need to work on that. Now, CRDDP did that work at that time, and I remember it costed me 40 lakh of rupees to get into the data system of the government, because government did not give data directly. So we had to get into the government data. And then we extracted the government data, which was in very bad format. And then we used the IT technology to convert the data into usable format. And then we computed the rates. And then we went to the media. Times of India published this paper. Then we went to the Electoral Commission. So there is a process through which we had to influence this. Now, these are tough things to do, but we know that we have resources and intellectual capital to do it. But we need support, financial support from people. We need a strategy to do it. How to do this in UP, how to do this in Bihar, how to do this in Bengal. That is the places where we have a lot of opportunities to work. It is just not in Karnataka or Tamil Nadu. The problems are more upstairs. Now, having told that, I want to answer somewhat harshly to Faisal Beg. That the work and the talk we are doing is not communal. For example, right now, we talked about how to improve the enrollment of Muslim community in India. Muslims are very clearly in the socio-political framework, very clearly identified as Muslims. They are identified. The whole discrimination in India has happened because they are identified as Muslims. And we need to demand Muslim data in the government records. And in fact, after such a committee, our recommendations, government went almost very close to create a data profile for Muslims. Cabinet committee also recommended it, but for one MP, a Congress MP from Kerala, who stopped that process. I know who, I'm not taking that, but I know who is. But working on social economic issues of Muslim is not a communal activity. I'm sorry, sir. You have misunderstood the Indian sociology. You have misunderstood what is happening nowadays. And I strongly recommend you come to USA. Almost every major university has a department of Islamic studies. Is it communal to study Islamic study? It is not. And in fact, National Social Science Research Foundation, ICSSR, Indian Council, they have established departments. For example, in Jamia, there is a department of so-called minority, special focus on minorities, where Muslims are studied directly. Similarly, the Muslim-oriented studying Muslims is not a communal activity; is a national duty to study, because we have to address their privileges. So, I'm sorry, I do not agree with your attitude or your understanding of the Muslim.
Thank you, Sharif Saab. Ishrat Apa had a comment and she withdrew it. I really feel bad. Ishrat Apa, please, if you unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, it was not very profound. Actually, I withdraw because...
I know. Please. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Sharif Saab already covered some of the things that I was asking as to what the diaspora can do. One comment I have, that this demographic dividend thing is a double-edged sword. I mean, you can really can be at a disadvantage because of the age structure, unemployed youth. They can be a very frustrated sort of a situation. So that's one comment. But the other thing is this, that you highlighted some of the things that the diaspora can do, and data certainly is extremely important. But anything else you think we can do to set an agenda which is really strong and viable?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ishrata.
Yeah. No. I certainly understand the issues. In the issue of the demographic divided double-edged sword, I cannot agree with you more. So unless we educate, the age structure is going to be the pain, not the facilitator of happy life. So we need to encourage the community to come, which is already happening now. Now the enrollment rate among Muslims has also increased. But the problem with the Muslim children is just not enrollment. It is within 4 years, the dropout rate is very high. So the school continuation rate is so low. It is lower than the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Now this we notice for last 30 years. We are unable to improve school enrollment rate. That is because something is because of the attitude, but something else is, as Daud Bhai said, that the girls are able to study, but the boys are getting dropped out because they have to go and work. Otherwise, their lives and living conditions will decline. Disposable income will decline. So these are the issues which we have to work. But the point is, I also mentioned after such a committee, there were huge improvement in allocation of budgetary allocations to improve, particularly minority community ke liye, Muslims ke liye particularly. In the name of Muslims, I'm telling you this because Reserve Bank of India bhi Muslim-oriented data collect karti hai. We talked with RBI. We negotiated with RBI to give the data on Muslims to find out how much bank loans they do get. So government in certain respects is open to address the Muslim issue. So now हमें आगे बढ़ना चाहिए. Muslim issue से हमारा डिमांड करना कोई हमारी हक है, हमारी हकदारी है. So now this dropout rates, how to bring dropout rates down is the community issue. Community has to work. We have to work towards that. But these are all not easy things to do. But we cannot say we cannot do and keep quiet. We have to continue to do it. So that is my request.